Gen Z is dropping out of society. They are a generation of people who make it hard to love them. So we have a lot of very serious economic woes going on right now. We have record high inflation and it's not getting better, and it won't be getting better anytime soon for anyone. What we know right now is that the inflation that we're seeing is actually designed like that. It is actually being created by the state because they cannot pay their debt down. They cannot pay down the debt on, or rather the interest payments that they owe on 34 or just over $34 trillion in debt. So they need interest, they need inflation to occur so that the value of the debt will decrease as people make more money as a result of inflation. The money will be worth less, but then so will the debt, and as a result, then they can begin affording to make those payments. And that's just the reality that we're living in right now. Of course, the boomers don't care. These people, all they care about is even if it's a couple of dollars, they still don't give a damn. They want those couple of dollars from Social Security because they're like, we paid into it, and even though we milked that entire damn thing, we still want something out of it. And these people actually think that Gen Z is going to pay all of this back because they're going to have to raise taxes as well. But that's the reality we're living in. Gen Z is laying flat in China. They've been quietly quitting for years in the United States, and many of them are now refusing to leave their parents. 54% of all Gen Zers live at home with their parents. They're living in their parents' basement. Not only are they living in their parents' basement, but their parents are subsidizing their living, so they're providing food for them. They're providing pocket money for them. They are covering all of their utilities and expenses because Gen Z is lazy. Gen Z is not simply rebelling against low wages. Gen Z is rebelling against work. They're very dishonest. They want a livable wage, so $50 an hour, $50 an hour, to work menial labor. They think that every job should pay at least 50 an hour. So a doctor and a person working at McDonald's should both be making the same amount of money because both are valuable. We know how this has worked in other countries, where they've pushed for communism and where everyone makes the same amount of money. When you pay the doctor and you pay, the lunch lady the exact same amount of money, you end up with no doctors, or you end up with a situation where the people who have the means to leave end up leaving. So the doctors just leave the country, or people stop going into medicine because it makes no sense. Why would you, why would you, why would you basically stress yourself out that much? You look at countries that do this, and they have horrible infrastructure. Why am I going to push myself to build this country, to go and learn these skills, to sacrifice all of this if I'm just going to make the same amount of money, as a person who is who's mopping floors, right? And people are saying, well, are you saying that a person who isn't mopping floors is not a valuable person? Okay, how about a dishwasher? Are you saying a dishwasher isn't a valuable person? Okay, how about a waiter? Are you saying a waiter isn't a valuable person? How about a ditch digger? Ditch diggers contribute a lot to society. And this is the big problem. So it's like no matter what you do, you're supposed to go and help build a country because basically it's just free labor. You're supposed to spend years becoming educated, years, putting in working 16 hours and doing all of these things. And then your reward for this is to be paid the same amount as someone doing very low effort. The Gen Z is trying to live off everyone. This is one of the worst generations ever. But what they are is they're basically this era's the modern day era version of the hippie. Basically, if you look at what the hippies were like in the 70s, they were lazy, they were untidy, they were immoral, sexually immoral. They were, they were woke. So they're like, hey man, love is love, man. Love is love. Hey, don't mess with him, man. All they did was sit around, not working, smoking weed, very disorderly. What were they doing on college campuses? We saw what they did. We saw exactly what they did in the 70s on college campuses, and we can see exactly what Gen Z is doing now in the modern day era on these campuses as well. So we know exactly who Gen Z are. They're the modern hippie. Okay, they're the modern day version of the hippie. They're not a good group of people. If you look at this article right here, Gen Z is living with parents longer, and it could be a disaster. Yeah, they're not good people. They're some very, very bad apples. Bad little apples, bad little apples. So the challenging economic climate is primary reasons Gen Z is opts to live with their parents. With a significant portion of this demographic struggling to pay bills on time, the financial pressure to manage rent, utilities, and other living expenses is alleviated with living at home. The decision is often driven by the desire to save money in the face of uncertain job markets and fluctuating economic conditions. The trend underscores the broader issues of financial instability among young adults, exacerbated by factors such as low entry level wages and high cost of living. So, I mean, it's a bad situation that we're looking at right now. Rising cost of living due to inflation. Inflation has sharply increased the cost of living, particularly affecting essentials like food and fuel. The economic pressure has made independent living unaffordable for many Gen Z adults who find it more feasible to stay with their parents to save money. The situation is a reflection of the broader economic challenges facing young adults, including stagnant wages, not keeping pace with inflation, making the goal of financial independence more elusive. Yeah, so it's not keeping up. So you basically get a little bit more, but not enough to survive. And this is how they steal from you. This is how they steal from you. Now, keep in mind with Gen Z, this is not a simple rebellion against poor working conditions, about unfair wages. It's a rebellion against work. When you say that, you're supposed to be paid, a livable wage for menial labor, it's very serious. This is a generation that was not raised to be employees. They were not raised to actively contribute to the economy or to society, and they were not, and they have zero resiliency. Are times hard? Absolutely. But Gen Z knew what was going on. They knew that college was not a gateway to a better life. And they're still, some of them are still going to college, thinking that because they have nothing else to do, living off those student loans. And it's like, bro, don't get involved in it. Do not go to college. They don't want to listen. All right. They're basically, they're very difficult to work with. They're very irresponsible. There's a lot of you who are like, well, if you want responsible workers, you have to pay them correctly, pay them fairly. This is absolute stupidity on the behalf of some of you. All right, just because you're not being paid fairly by your employer doesn't mean that you can be irresponsible in the work you're supposed to be doing. All right, if you don't like your job, quit your job. If you're not being treated fairly, quit your job. But if you are tasked, for example, you're in law enforcement, or you're working in security, and it's your job to protect, to oversee. There are people who could end up suffering gravely because of your foolish actions. So you're like, well, they're not paying me fairly, so I'm just going to be an idiot. Like, it can result in serious ramifications. If you're in a field where you're not, guys, I used to work in insurance. I was not being paid fairly. But at the same time, I had to be very responsible regarding the work I did, because it could cost a lot of people a lot of money. Eventually, I left. Okay, it's hard. A lot of these companies are predatory because they know that you don't know anything. Especially when you're a young person, and they take advantage of your naivety. They try to convince you, like, okay, well, you're gonna come here and you're gonna work your way up, and this is your starting wage. And it's like, okay, well, you're gonna start you off at $15 an hour, when in reality you should be making, you have a college degree from an in like from like a master's in business, and they were starting off at 15, when you should be pulling in 45, at least 45 or $50,000 a year. And it's like, oh well, you're gonna work your way up, and like 5 years later, you're like just now seeing 35,000, and you're like, look at that, you went in 5 years, your salary has gone from 30K to 35. Like, that's, you've increased like $1,000 a year. What are you complaining about? They take it, so you have to be aware of that, but you have to also learn from these experiences, and You have to learn from these experiences and advocate for yourself, fight for yourself. But it doesn't mean you can be dishonest, and it doesn't mean you can be a crook. Because when you steal from these companies, when you do these things, you're not hurting the company. You're hurting the people around you. You're hurting the people that you work with. You're making their jobs more difficult, because if you're not working, they're going to have to do the work that you're supposed to be doing. I know you don't care, but guess what? You're screwing it up for everyone else. And also, you're making it harder for the consumer, because of your stupidity, because you're stealing or doing whatever there, it's going to only result in higher premiums, higher costs for goods, everything. It's all interconnected. Gen Z does not care, because Gen Z is just, they're not adults. They're not maturing at all. And it's like people are trying to blame Gen X for Gen Z. Gen X was an awesome generation. Gen X never told these people that the world was going to be rainbows and sunshine. Gen Z was raised by social media, and if you didn't give them phones or cell phones, the moment that they went to school, they would pick it up from their friends. It's like, what do you want to do? Isolate them from the world? I've met some of these people. I've run into some of these people online who basically homeschool their kids, don't give their kids cell phones, and essentially isolate them from the rest of the world. And it's kind of hard to. It's very, very. It's dangerous to do that, because you do that, and then the moment that they step out into the real world, guess what? It's going to be only 10 times worse, because now they're going to want to do all of the things that they missed out on when they were, when they were locked up. Okay, when they were, because it's a cultural and it's a social problem. Western society is no place to raise children. The United States is no place to raise children. This is a failed country, just like Haiti. It is a failed society. Guys, don't forget, I have another channel called Angry, where I discuss anime, gaming, geek stuff, nerd stuff, real world stuff, and whatever else interests me. There's a link to it in the description of the video. Go check it out, subscribe to the channel, enjoy the content. And if you're enjoying the content on this channel and you want even more of this content, you can head over to the Men Walking Away channel, where I release daily videos. There's a link to the Men Walking Away channel in the description of the video. Go check it out, subscribe to the channel, enjoy the content. Guys, what do you think regarding all of this? Gen Z is dropping out of society. They're dropping out of society. They're a very difficult group of people to work with. And it's like, they're making the world just the worst place as they continue to pester everyone. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWM and Walking Away. And cheers.